In early 2025, Adobe released updates for both Photoshop and Lightroom. Let's have a look at some of those updates and how they impact on photographers. One of the main updates was the introduction of Firefly version 3. Firefly is essentially the technology that provides the AI features within Adobe products. Major improvements in Adobe Firefly version 3 include the ability to render more accurate images, to render those images faster. There's also the ability to interpret text prompts better, with the promise of much more to come on that front, including the interpretation of and or statements within such prompts, and the ability to include reference images. Okay, let's have a look at how some of these features have been incorporated into the latest editions of Photoshop. So here we have some images. I'm going to choose these two images here, and I'm going to edit those images in Photoshop, and I'll edit copies just to be on the safe side, and load those images into Photoshop. And here we have some images. We've got an image there of St Elmwood's Church at Hale and one of Black Bridge at Hale. Not very wonderful photographs, so what we'll do to demonstrate some of the things that we need to look at. Let's go back to the church in Hale, and here we have St Elmwood's Church, and you can see that in the sky there are some wires. Now you can use the remove tool to get rid of those in the traditional way, but if I choose the remove tool and now look at the options, we have these new options here for find distractions. And if I click on the option to find distractions, you can see that there are two groups there, one-click removals and editable removals. Now currently there's only one item in each. I dare say that will expand as more and more updates are brought out, but currently one-click removal is limited to wires and cables, and editable ones are people. Now obviously in this photo what I need to remove are the wires and cables. You can see lots of wires and cables in this image. There's some down here, there's some coming across here, there's a few that got going across there. Let's just tell it to find the wires and cables and get rid of them. So choosing that, it says removing area, should do this relatively quickly, and there we are. You can see that the cables have all gone. Notice that the posts are still there, and something very strange is happening to this photo over here. It's removed bits of the post and not the others. We could all obviously get rid of those in the traditional way. I'll just highlight them and then tell the removal tool to take those out in the normal way. You may also have noticed that up here we have got options for using AI or not. We've got auto, which basically lets Photoshop decide if it's going to use AI to remove these things or not. Generative AI on, which tells Photoshop always to use AI. And you've got generative AI off, which tells it never to use generative AI. The choice is up to you. Let's have a look at a different image then. Let's go to this other image, the image we had here of Black Bridge. This is a bit more complicated. The wires in the sky were pretty easy to detect, but here we've got the wires with a lot of foliage and stuff behind them. So not as easy a job in many ways. Lots of cables going all over the place. But let's try the same thing again. Make sure the removal tool is selected, find distractions, wires and cables, and let it do its thing. And you can see it's actually done a pretty good job even in a complex scenario like this. Again, the posts have all been left and you'd have to remove those in the traditional way. but I think you'll agree it's been very good at removing the actual wires themselves. Okay, so let's get rid of that. I'll close down these two images. I won't bother to save them, and get rid of Photoshop, and let's go back to our image here, and let's choose something else instead. Let's choose something with some people in it. Let's choose this image here. I'll load this image. Again, I'll choose edit in Photoshop, and I'll choose to edit a copy. I'll bring that into Photoshop, and there we have an image. We've got Brooke in a back street in Truro, and you can see here that we've got some people behind, so it won't come as any great surprise that I want to use the remove people tool. So again, I'll just click on the removal tool, click on find distractions, and this time choose people. And you can see that Photoshop has basically determined what it's going to get rid of, and it's highlighted those. It's actually done not too bad a job of outlining the things that I want to get rid of. Notice the subject itself, the Brooke, has been left unaffected, but it's picked up these two people walking down here. It's also picked up this little crowd of people in the background. Now I could go in and edit that mask if I wanted to, but if I'm happy with what it's selected, I can simply just tick on the little tick, and it will get rid of those people for me. A bit more complicated than removing wires. It's got to generate the backgrounds and everything, but there you can see it's not done too bad a job of removing those people. Let's come back and have a look at the main image, and you can see there that the people have gone. So if you compare the two, there we have it with the people, and if I remove them again, you can see the people there have disappeared. So not too bad a job at all. So let's try another image. I'll go back to Lightroom, and I'll choose this image here of Sarah. So I'll edit that in Photoshop. I'll edit a copy again, bring that into Photoshop, and you can see here we've got essentially a similar image. We've got Sarah there in the street and sort of three people behind her. So let's try that again. So I'll make sure the removal tool is selected, find distractions, and choose people, and it goes through and it finds those people there and highlights them. But let's suppose this time I want to keep this woman here but get rid of these two. Now by default it's selected them all to get rid of, but what I can do is go in and alter the mask. I'll just alter the size of my brush a little bit and just use the Alt key to remove the mask, and go in and just remove the mask from that person there. I will leave the others selected, and again when I'm happy just click on the little tick and off it goes, and it should leave that person there but remove the other two. Okay, let's have a look at something a little bit different. I'm going to close this image. I won't bother to save it, and I'll go back to my Lightroom and I'll select a different picture. I'll select this one and open that up in Photoshop. I've got there a picture of St Michael's Mount. Let's suppose I want to add a car to the causeway, a nice SUV for example. What I can do is I can choose my selection brush, which is there, and basically draw an area where I want the SUV to go. Don't need to be too accurate, that'll do. And because I started and finished in the same point, it's filled the rest in for me. Let me just do that again so that if you didn't see that, select the selection brush and then simply draw an area where roughly you want the thing to go, and when you get back to the beginning it fills in the entire area for you. Notice I've got the contextual toolbar switched on. This is this thing here. If that doesn't appear, you can simply get it by going into Window, scrolling down to contextual toolbar, which is near the bottom, and it will pop up. Right, so having got that there, that's roughly where I want my vehicle to go. I'll select generative fill. What do I want to go in there? Let's just type in SUV and click generate, and it should go off and produce me some pictures of a SUV, hopefully, and put them somewhere in that pink area. Oops, that's not quite what I wanted. Let's try that one. That's really not what I wanted either. Let's try generate again and see what happens. I may have selected my area a little wrong. If it doesn't do it this time, I'll reselect. Right, okay, so that's not working. So what I'll do there is I'll simply abandon that. I'll go to the layer it's created here and simply delete that layer. And what I'll do is I'll redraw the selection area. Let's put it there instead. Hopefully that will keep it actually on the causeway. Click on generative fill again and generate. And hopefully this time I'll get a better result. Right, that's more like it, only it's facing the wrong way maybe. I've got that option, which I don't particularly like. It's put a couple of great rocks on there. That's better, it's facing the right way. I'm still not happy with it, but that's the sort of image I want. So what I'll do instead here, I want something that looks vaguely like this. So I'll click on these little three dots here and choose generate similar. And that will produce me a picture that, or an image that looks similar to the one I've got, but hopefully a little bit better. So let's see what it produces. And again, I've got these three options here. Which all go off the screen, unfortunately. You can also choose generate similar from here as well. You don't have to do it from the contextual toolbar. It's getting there, but it's too low down in the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that layer again and redo my selection. And this time I won't go right down to the bottom. And try again. So generative fill, SUV. So hopefully it'll put one on there now which doesn't drop off the edge of the picture. So we're getting there. That's more like it. That's what the sort of thing I'm looking for. So again, I want it something like that. So not quite like that maybe, so generate similar. Okay, that's better, that one. So once I'm happy with that, of course, I can just get rid of that and accept the image. But this generate similar option is quite useful for generating something that looks similar to what you actually want. You get somewhere near what you want, and then you can create variations based on its best guess so far. Okay, let's have a look at some features relating to backgrounds. I'm going to close this image. I won't bother to save it, and I'll go back to my images, and I'll take this image here that we've got of Brooke in the street at Truro and open that in Photoshop. I'll edit the original for now, and there we have it. So we've got Brooke here in a fairly urban environment. So what I want to do is to change the background completely. Now if you've got this contextual toolbar visible, and say if you haven't, you can always get it visible by going to Window and choosing Contextual Toolbar. We've got options here to select subject or remove background. Well, in this case I want to remove the background, so click Remove Background, and Photoshop will automatically remove the background, and generally it makes a pretty good job of it, as it does here. You can see that it's actually created a mask. It does tell me that I can get better results if I use the cloud. I won't bother for the minute. If you're happy with the results, you can see it here on the mask. If you're not happy with the mask, you can always go in and manually edit the mask. But I'll leave it as it is for now. So there we have the background, currently transparent with a mask. So if I want to add a background to it, I can go in here and choose Generate Background, and what I can do is essentially tell it what sort of background I want. So let's go for Inside Old Castle, and hit Generate, and it'll then go off and produce me 3 examples that it thinks might match my description. Let's see what it comes up with. And it's come up with that one, and that one. Of course, if I don't like any of those, then I can hit Generate, or as we've seen, we can go in and do Generate Similar. So I'll go for that one option in this case, and see what it comes up with. And I'm going to settle for that one for now, because I can't be bothered to change it effectively. So we've got that in there. So there's my images, and I'm going to stick with that one. I'm just going to get rid of the contextual toolbar at the minute, because it's in the way. So I've got rid of that, and you can actually see here that the mask wasn't too good down by her foot there. I could actually go in and change that, but we can generate an image that way. The only problem of doing it this way is that the background has got a hole in it. You can see what I mean by that. If I click on the actual image of Brooke herself and go to move her around, if I move her from where she is, it leaves a hole in the background, which maybe isn't ideal. Okay, so let's have a look at doing something similar but using a different method. I've gone back to the original picture I had with Brooke in the street in Truro, and I did that by simply using File Revert, which throws away all the changes you've made to a file and reloads it from the disk, so you're starting again completely from scratch. I've got my contextual toolbar showing, so if it isn't showing, remember you can always go into Window and then go down to contextual toolbar to switch it on. So I'm going to start by removing the background just as we did before. So I'm click on Remove Background, and as we've seen, that simply automatically selects what Photoshop thinks is the background, applies a mask, and effectively makes the background transparent. Now I could fiddle with the mask and make it even more accurate, but I'm just going to leave it as it is for now for the sake of speed. Now to change the background this time, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go onto this little icon over here, which is generate an image using a text prompt. It's actually different from this generate background option. So I'm going to click on this generate image, and you can see that we get some different options here. We can tell it what we want, so I'm going to put a grass field with a castle on a hill in the distance. Right, so that's what I want to produce. You've got the option here of, do you want it art or do you want it photo? Well, mine's a photo, so I'm going to go for photo. You can also add effects if you want, so you can have all sorts of effects, 3D effects, cinematic effects, art nouveau effects, all sorts of things. I'm going to leave effect for the time being. There's all sorts of options up here you can choose. What I am going to do though is I'm going to go into style, and where you have the style, not only can you choose a style from a whole list of things here, but you can also add a reference image. And I think this ability to add reference images is going to be something that we see more and more of. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to choose a reference image. I'm going to choose this photograph here that I have of the gardens at St Michael's Mount, and I'm going to add that and use that as a reference image. So Photoshop will now use this as a guide to the sort of images that I'm looking for. So having done that, I'm going to hit generate, and Photoshop will go off and it will create my images based on the image that I selected as a reference image. And you can see here it's picked 3 slightly different images. If you don't like any of them, you can always generate or generate similar in order for it to go back and have another think and maybe produce something which is more to your liking. Let's see what it comes up with. So we've got some different images here that it's chosen. I'm going to go for that one. Doesn't really matter for sake of a demo, but I'm going to go for that one. I'm happy with that one, so I'm just going to get rid of this dialog box for a minute so we can see what's going on a bit better. If we look in the layers panel, it's actually put that image above the image that we had there, so I'll simply drag it underneath, and there we have the image of the model now on top of the image that was created. Now of course she may look a little bit big compared with landscape, but you can always do edit, transform, and I choose the scale option, and oops, right, I've got the wrong layer selected. Make sure you're on the right layer. Let's try again, edit, transform, scale, and I can reduce the size in relation to the rest of the image if I want to particularly, so we can put that there. And if you want to match the tones, of course, then you can always do filter, go down to neural filters, and you can use that to harmonize the tones. You can choose the harmonize option, choose which layer you want it to harmonize it with, I've only got one other layer, so it's not exactly a difficult choice. And it will go through and it will try and harmonise the tones, and you can see it's actually done that already. That's what it looks like now. That's what it looked like before. Fairly subtle change. You can, if you want, increase or reduce the strength of that change. You can press this little button here and flick between the two. I'll leave it as a fairly subtle change, and I'll just choose OK. Press Ctrl D to get rid of that flashing ants, and there we have the image superimposed on the background. I might want to go in there and tidy the mask up a little bit. You can see particularly around the shoe here, it's not particularly good. If I wanted to match it in completely, I might add a shadow to the grass and all sorts of things, but it's a lot better than it was before. And also you have the advantage that because we produce the image using that method, if I decide to move the model around, then we don't end up with a hole that we've then got to fill in. So that's just another way of achieving a similar thing. There's only one other thing that I want to look at in terms of changes and improvements in the January 2025 update, and for that I'm going to need another image, so I'm going to close that. I won't bother to save it. I'm going to go back to my images here, and I'm going to select a different one. I'm going to select this one here just to be awkward, and I'm going to edit that in Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just straighten it up a bit. We have a tree here which is straight, but Sarah seems to be walking at a strange angle, so I'm just going to straighten that up. And I'm going to get rid of this contextual toolbar for the minute so I can see what's going on. So that's better. So one thing that has improved is the use of the selection tool here, the selection brush, and the way in which you can use that. So I'm going to choose the selection tool, just draw around the edge of Sarah's dress. I don't need to be too accurate. Doesn't matter if I include a hand and a neck. And I'll close the selection, and because I went back to the start, it selects the whole area. Now I need my contextual toolbar again, so I'll just do Window, Contextual Toolbar, and bring that up. And I can use the Generative Fill option, so I can choose Contextual Fill and decide what I want Sarah to be wearing. So for example, I can do red dress with white polka dots, and when I hit generate, it should have a little think about that and give me 3 different styles of red, white polka dot dresses. So option 1, option 2, option 3. Again, if there's one I particularly like the look of, I can always go into here and choose generate similar, and it will go off and produce me something based on the one that I've done. I've noticed in the new beta version of Photoshop, not only have they improved this again a little bit more, but they've also included the option to add a reference image. If of course you decide that you don't like red polka dot dresses after all that, you can go in and change it quite easily. Black evening gown. And again, it will produce different images based on what you want to select. So if you like the look of that one, again you can go in and do generate similar. And produce variations on that until you get one that you like the look of. Note it's also adding accessories as well, so you can choose whichever one you like the look of. Just get rid of the dialog box. So that just about wraps up all of the enhancements and additional features which have been added to Photoshop and Lightroom in the 2025 release.